Offensive BFM covers the part of the dogfight where we're in a position of advantage on our bandit. In the last video of this series, we covered the heat to guns exercise, which is a great introduction to BFM. The heat to guns exercise covers just about everything you need to know about offensive maneuvering in BFM when things are going well. But what about when things aren't going well? One of the problems you might encounter is a rapid onset of closure rate, which can be solved with the quarter plane maneuver. We have an exercise to cover how to do that properly. Before we dive into that exercise, I want to make sure we have some prerequisites covered. You should be familiar with the topics shown here. If not, then check out the links in the description. Now, normally in offensive BFM, you would be constantly adjusting power and angles to stay out of an excessive closure situation. But we're all human and we can make mistakes. When I watch recordings of dogfights in DCS, I see a lot of this. The fighter has a high closure rate and the only thing they know to do is to reduce throttle and put out the air brakes, but that's usually not enough. The quarter plane is a last-ditch maneuver we can use to keep from overshooting a bandit's 3-9 line in the event that we're coming in too fast. Or maybe you're intercepting a very slow-moving aircraft and don't realize it until the last moment. Either way, this is a last resort, but it's better than an overshoot. Let's run through how we do it. For the quarter plane exercise, we're going to start with the perch setup, exactly as shown in the perch setup video. If you followed all the steps correctly, then you would end up like this, with the bandit defensive at a range of 3,000 feet. At this point, the bandit would be moving at 315 knots, while the fighter is doing 350 knots. So there would be 35 knots of closure. As the fighter, you need to resist the urge to cheat and anticipate the slowdown. You want that closure so you can practice the quarter plane, so keep that speed high. Keep the gun sight on the bandit, and once it looks like you're about to break 1,000 feet, you'll execute the quarter plane maneuver. 1,000 feet is when the wingspan of the bandit fills half the reticle. Once you see the quarter plane picture rotor wings level, this is called putting your feet on the bandit. Then set idle power and pull a max performance pull up and out of the bandit's plane of motion. This should arrest your closure rate and leave you free to roll back into a turn with the bandit. You should practice this until it becomes second nature. Once it becomes instinct, it'll help prevent accidental overshoots. You can end this exercise with the knock it off or terminate call. The way this works is any member of the flight will start the call with the flight call sign, then all members transmit their position number in order. Here's an example of how that would work. If the Iron 11 flight needed to end an exercise, then anyone could transmit Iron 11, knock it off. Then every flight member would respond as follows: Iron 1, knock it off, Iron 2, knock it off, and on down the line. The difference between knock it off and terminate is that knock it off is called when safety of flight is a factor or where doubt or confusion exists. Terminate is used when none of those apply. And this isn't just for this exercise. You can use this procedure for any exercise. So far, we've covered 2 exercises that have a passive bandit following a scripted set of maneuvers. Now it's time to try one where the bandit is actively trying to get away from you and you have a limited amount of time to get a kill. Welcome to the medium range OBFM exercise. In this exercise, we're going to start with the 6,000 foot perch setup. This is a little different than the 3,000 foot perch we've been using so far, and we'll go over the details in a moment. The big thing you'll notice is that unlike the 3,000 foot perch that starts inside the bandit's turn circle, this 6,000 foot perch puts you outside that turn circle. So you can expect your first task will be to align turn circles. The fighter also has an additional problem to deal with. After fights on is called, the bandit gets away if he can reach 720 degrees of turn. That's just 2 times around the circle, so you need to be quick to catch the bandit. The fighter will have to get every last ounce of turn performance out of the jet to get that valid gunshot before the bandit wins. The perch we'll be using for this is the 6,000 foot perch, which differs from the 3,000 foot perch in both distance and speed. With the 3,000 foot setup, the flight begins at 6,000 feet of separation and calls fights on at 3,000 feet. For this one, we'll begin at 9,000 feet of separation and call fights on at 6,000 feet. The final speed changes too. In the 3,000-foot setup, both aircraft start at 350, but the Bandit ends at 315. In this version, it'll be 350 all around. Other than those two changes, the 6K setup runs exactly the same. Now let's take a look at this from within the cockpit. Throughout this exercise, the Bandit only needs to worry about one thing, a max performance sustained turn. That's the most direct way to reach the 720-degree mark. Doing anything else only helps the fighter win. Just watch the instruments to keep your speed at the optimum rate on your EM chart, and keep an eye on the HSI. An easy way to know if you've reached 720 degrees of turn is to begin the exercise facing one of the 4 cardinal directions. If you start out by flying north, you'll check left 45 to start the perch, and usually you'll be right back at north by the time Fights On is called. Now all you have to do is pass by north on the HSI 2 more times and you've won the match. Now let's look at the fighter's perspective. The first thing you'll need to do after Fights On is to identify the turn circle. Remember to watch for that sudden shift in LOS rate to signal you're on the Bandit's turn circle. From there, you'll need to use your repositions to get situated in the control zone. You'll know you're there when you see the Bandit just above the canopy bow. In real life, this is 1 to 2 fists above the bow, but in the sim, it's right about here. Remember the rules of threes: 3,000 feet of range, 30 degrees AA, and steady, controlled closure. Range and closure estimation comes from experience, but we can see AA by drawing that imaginary box around our Bandit. If it's a rectangle shape like this, then AA is too high and we need to ease reposition a little. When that imaginary box becomes a square with the fuselage about as long as the wingspan, then we know we have 30 AA. That means we've got the rule of threes down. Now it's time to move in for the kill. Let's ease that gun pipper up onto the Bandit and get at least half a second of trigger pull on him. Now we can call tracking kill Bandit and then terminate with our call sign to end the exercise. When we talk about 30 AA, that's not the only aspect we're allowed to use. You can go under that number like what you see here. We just want to avoid going above that since it'll make it harder to get a good tracking solution. We mentioned several numbers throughout this exercise. We also didn't mention any limits for the Bandit. These are all parameters that can be adjusted. A good parameter to start with is to limit the Bandit to mil power. This is because a Bandit that can use afterburner is very difficult to catch, especially for someone new to BFM. So I suggest starting there and then easing into a full performance Bandit. Whatever parameters you go with, the important thing is to practice until this all becomes instinct. In this video, we covered 2 more offensive BFM exercises. The first one we took a look at was the quarter plane exercise. In this exercise, we started with the perch setup and a high closure rate. Once the fighter got to 1,000 feet, we put our feet on the Bandit by going wings level with the horizon. Then after we pulled up and out of plane to stop our closure rate, we turned back into the Bandit. This is a last-ditch maneuver to keep from overshooting the Bandit's 3-9 line. We also covered how you can end any exercise with the knock it off or terminate call over the radio. Remember that every member of the flight responds in order with their position number. Lastly, we went over the medium range OBFM exercise, which you can think of as a sort of final exam for offensive BFM. In this exercise, we use a 6,000 foot perch setup, which is just like our earlier perch setup, except that it starts at 9,000 feet and puts us at Fights On when we're 6,000 feet apart. Both jets also keep a speed of 350 knots throughout the perch. Once Fights On is called, the fighter will have to use all the BFM skills we've gone over to catch the Bandit and get a valid gun solution. Remember that all the parameters we mentioned are suggestions. If you want to change any of them to meet a personal training objective, then go ahead and do it. but I recommend starting with the bandit that is limited in power or G to get the basics down before moving up to an unrestricted bandit. No matter how you go about it, it's important to practice these skills hands-on. That's the only way to turn them from knowledge into muscle memory. So good luck with your training, and thanks for watching.